you can't do it alone. And I think for probably the first 3 or 4 years after everything happened to me, I thought I could do it alone. And that unfortunately resulted in some coping mechanisms that weren't really healthy or great. And it probably took me, I would say, 6 or 7 years before I really decided that I needed to get myself in a place that was going to be healthy and that I could really understand the trauma that I had experienced, and that I could use, I always call it, use my powers for good rather than for evil. And so I went and I sought out some one-on-one therapy from an organization that specifically focused on survivors of sexual violence. And that was really, really healthy for me. I was able to spend about a year attending those one-on-one counseling sessions and being around other people who had experienced sexual violence so that I could understand that what happened to me, although, stranger rape is an anomaly, I didn't feel quite as alone, and I could really understand that I had this powerful voice that I could use to advocate on behalf of others, as it sounds like you found yourself, Jesse.
And Jesse, and this is actually for both of you, and I want to hear from both of you on this question and everything, is, and I've mentioned this to you before, Dawn, in just our phone conversations and everything, is how I sometimes feel that whether it's sexual abuse or whether it's even psychology in general, that our media, and yes, I'm a part of the media, whether it's this podcast or whether it's I've worked in journalism and I've got friends that work in TV, but it seems to me that the media in general does a disservice to the victim and to just psychology in general, because I think that it brings a very negative picture of getting help. And I think that scares a lot of people away. I know that even in our community, meaning the African-American community, a lot of people, well, we have a hard enough time going to doctors, and a lot of times we just totally, absolutely want to avoid psychologists at all aspects. So how do you fight against these stereotypes? And am I correct in thinking that there is a lot of stereotypes that are being played out by the media?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think definitely so. I think the media plays on this psychology of victimology, and it reinforces the whole sense of powerlessness. And what I love about what Dawn was sharing is my experience when I work clinically with people who had suffered abuse, and as I work with executives, and some of them have experienced abuse, certainly fear and bullying, that it's important to realize your power and to act on it. And when you say, this was terrible, this was horrible what happened to me, and I am not a victim, and here's what I'm going to do to speak up and to exert my power in the world. And that's very healing. And if people don't find their voice, if they don't stand up, it's problematic. And the media, unfortunately, some of it is really good. Most of it really doesn't understand the psychology, and they actually do more damage.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely. And on top of that, I think I've learned to really embrace my mental health issues and to understand that they exist, and that I don't have to be ashamed of those things. Like, it's a part of who I am and my makeup and what happened to me. And I really feel like everybody that I've ever met has some type of story, something that they have had to conquer or deal with, maybe some type of history, trauma-wise. And, I think the media does a disservice in terms of the way that they proclaim mental health as being something that is stigmatized or that we should be ashamed of or afraid to admit. And I disagree with that entirely. It feels very liberating to me to say, hey, you know what, I'm really experiencing a high level of anxiety right now. This is something that I just need to say out loud. And I feel okay with myself for those things that are an ingrained part of me. And I wish we could break that stigma. I wish media would have a better handle on what that looks like.
Yeah.
And one other thing, just in terms of media, and I want to get back to you, Dawn, and everything, and if you want to jump in, Dusty, that'd be great too, is it seems to me that a lot of times it also over-sexualizes, and I know there are people like Tip O'Neill that might have even talked about the rap industry and some of the lyrics and everything, but it just seems to me that a lot of times it over-sexualizes, and that might even add into some of the abuse that takes place because of the way that we treat society and some of the media images that are put out there. I mean, do we really need certain women in certain kind of outfits to sell a car? And I know I understand the concept of advertising and things of that nature, but sometimes it seems to me that the imagery has nothing to do with the product.
Oh, I mean, I could get up on a soapbox for hours around the way that we over-sexualize media and what the lyrics are of the songs that we listen to and how much we personify alcohol and sex and drugs in our music, in our movies, in our television. You know, I have those conversations with my children all the time, and I don't want to say that, you know, women should be berated for, you know, what clothing they're wearing. But I agree with you entirely when you say, like, that doesn't have anything to do with the product half the time in a lot of our advertisements and movies. And, you know, it's crazy the amount of things that our young people are saturated with when it comes to violence and sexuality and what is right for a man versus what is right for a woman, you know, and how we leave out people who identify as other gender identities completely because we live in this complete gender binary society. So, like I said, I could get on that soapbox.
No problem. You could get on anytime you feel like it. Like I said, we love having guests on even multiple times. So after you come back from Hawaii, I'll definitely have to get you back on again at some point to continue this conversation. But, Dusty, earlier before you got on and even before Dawn got on, I was talking to Dante, and one of the things he was talking about was in the labor movement and in some of the things that are going on with May Day is the fact that here in North Carolina and throughout the nation, there's going to be a teacher strike. And part of that strike is going to be involving the fact that a lot of the support individuals are not there. And he was putting out some very scary statistics about how little psychology is actually being allowed, or school psychology is actually being allowed in the schools. I forget the number, but it's like 1 in some ridiculous amount of thousands is the amount of patients that each psychologist has, if you want to break it down, and they're coming in at odd hours, maybe once a day, once a week, if they're lucky, maybe twice a week, depending on where they are and everything. Is this another issue that you're finding that you have to face as one that deals with psychology? It seems to me that we have downplayed it even in our education system. I even remember going to school, there was like psychology to some degree being taught. I don't even know if it's taught in the school system anymore.
Yeah, Mark, that's a great question, and I believe the school system is broken. Well, first of all, we're training people for 19th century skills versus 21st century, and there's also this. We've raised 3 children. Our youngest just turned 24 today, and we put them in schools which focused on emotional intelligence quotient, which was Quaker schools, and what we found is that it's not so much the intellectual focus. It really is. Your intellect is more like your software chip. It's your computer chip. It determines, you know, how analytical, how powerful you are with that aspect. However, the emotional intelligence aspect is more like the software. And it tells, so you can be really, really smart and do really, really stupid things. You can be really, really smart and really do egregious things that get you thrown in jail or lose your life. It's that emotional intelligence, the ability for self-control, self-discipline, compassion, empathy for other people, ability to collaborate and coordinate. And those are the skills that are needed, along with leveraging each other's intelligence. And the schools are still focused on the intellectual quotient. They're not focusing on the emotional intelligence side of this. And the psychology piece, understanding practical psychology, I mean, it saved my life. And it can save people's lives. And I get paid a lot by organizations to come in and teach them basic stuff could have learned in grade school or high school if they'd applied it in teams. And I think that the school system needs a radical overhaul, and we need to start valuing teachers as much as we value bankers.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that some other people that do the kind of work that you do, and it seems to me that more and more corporations are going that route. They're realizing that their workforce is not understanding leadership and leadership development, so they're having to go to outside sources like yourself, because even some people that were taught in business school, which is supposed to be training our business leaders, or law school, which is supposed to be training our legal leaders, oftentimes they find that some of these people do not have those skill sets, and they're still having to call professionals like yourself in order to come in and give them some basic training on just basic leadership principles.
Yes. Well, part of that emotional intelligence has to do with what it means to be a man in the world, what it means to be a woman, what it means if you don't identify completely with either gender, or if you identify with the opposite biological gender you were born with, and understanding that spectrum. In some so-called primitive societies, they recognize 7 genders. We have trouble with just 2. But the emotional intelligence has to do with the openness of mind, the flexibility, the ability to connect and to care and to show appreciation for other people. And I think that is something that we really wanted to focus on with our kids. And I would agree with Dawn. And I think that really raising healthy children is a countercultural experience for parents today, given all the media and all of the advertisements out there that tries to sexualize young girls and tells young boys what they're supposed to be in ways that actually exploit them and exploit young women.
And I know I've only got like about a minute or two to go, but it seems to me that even some of our society tools, our society organizations don't help either, Dawn and Dusty, because I've actually got friends that are involved in the church and involved in other kind of cultural institutions, and it seems to me that some of those also play into the message. I can think of like many churches, and I'm not even thinking about the abuse that's going on in the Catholic Church, but just the message that churches often give to both women and men that are counter to what the message of a real healthy society is. So, if you're teaching men one thing about, you should go out and shop around, and then you're teaching the women to be chaste, you're giving 2 contradictory messages to 2 different genders. So then we wonder what happens to society and why we have all these issues.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So just as we're winding down and everything, I think I've got about a minute or two. Are there any final thoughts that both of you would like to share? And I would definitely like both of you to give the ways that people can get in touch with you and things of that nature. And I was always taught to be respectful, so I'm going to go ladies first. That might be stereotypical, but I'm going to go ladies first. Then we'll have Dawn. If there's ways that people can reach you, not this week because you're going to Hawaii. So I know that if they send you an email, you're probably not going to answer. But after you get back, how can they reach you if they're interested in learning more about Denim Day, which by the time they reach you, it have already happened, or just about being a survivor and ways that they might just want to, you might be able to help them in some of the struggles that they're going on with?
So Denim Day is this Wednesday, April 24th. Wear jeans to support survivors. Doesn't matter where you work, where you live. That's the best way to do it. You can go to our website at denimdaymke.org, more about how you can get involved. You can follow us on Facebook at Denim Day Milwaukee. Also on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all Denim Day Milwaukee. And you can always instant message me on the Facebook page if you have questions, or even though I'll be in Hawaii, I'll still be looking at Facebook, so I probably will respond to you in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, contact RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. If you need support right away, they have a 24-hour hotline.
Thank you. And Dusty, how can folks reach you if they need some leadership advice? Maybe it's a business person, or maybe just people that just need general psychology advice in general, and some of the great things that you're doing with your leadership organization. How can they reach you?
There are 3 ways. One is theactsofcourage.com. That's THE, theactsofcourage.com, which talks about the importance of courage and breaks it into 8 distinct acts with videos and so forth. The second is StaubLeadership.com, which is a business-to-business portal, and it talks about all the programs we offer. And we also have a Facebook, Staub Leadership Facebook page, and we also have the Acts of Courage Facebook page that people can look at, and contact me at Dusty@StaubLeadership.com.
And real quickly, I think I got 1 minute left to go. Are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience as we wind the show down and everything? I don't know if you have any final thoughts that you just want to share with the audience in general.
A couple, just feeling inspired by Dawn's courage and her acts of power. And I would say this, I think compassion is always the best answer. And remember, no one can do it for you, and you can't do it by yourself. And the biggest enemies we face are fear and shame.